Welcome to Launchbase, a fast-paced podcast exploring the latest in tech funding and product launches. In under 30 minutes, we break down key trends, interview industry leaders, and uncover what's driving the next wave of innovation. And now your host, John Radford.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Launchbase. This is the podcast that dives into all things tech in under 30 minutes. So I'm your host, John Radford, and each week I chat with individuals shaping the tech landscape. So today I am joined by Phil McSweeney. Phil is an advisor, coach, and challenger, hello Phil, to founders who are serious about scaling. Phil doesn't do sugarcoating. Most founders fail, and those who succeed crack the connection between idea, market, personal strengths, and the most important one, well, not the most important one, but one of them is execution. He helps founders develop the mindset, discipline, and strategy to break through the noise and become exceptional. Phil is also the author of Angel Think, a must-read for fundraising founders looking to see the world through the eyes of investors. So today, we're going to cover quite a few points, but why founders fail, the biggest mistakes in scaling, how to sharpen your founder mindset, and what investors really look for when backing a company. So let's dive in. Phil, thank you for joining us.
Hello, John. Good morning. Pleasure to be here.
It's good to have you. How was that intro? Is there anything you want to expand on or add to that, or maybe give us a little bit of a potted history?
I think hopefully all true, and hopefully I won't be sugarcoating anything.
Good. That's what we want. We want tell us how it is. Tell us what you see.
Yeah.
Don't sugarcoat. So tell us a little bit about your journey, but sort of go as far back as you want or as far back as you think relevant, and we'll go from there.
Kind of man and boy, but very briefly, I started working in the NHS, where my career began, and I was 30 years in the NHS, got to being a director of a trust, was offered redundancy 17 years ago. I thought that's a decent chunk of money, and I took it, and I decided I didn't want to go back to doing anything big, corporate, slow-moving, whatever. And I trained as an executive coach, and I thought that's what I'd be doing for the duration. And I'd done a fair amount of that. But at the time, I also discovered I was completely unaware of it, this whole thing called angel investing. I went along to an angel group, and I kind of fell in love with the whole idea of, people telling stories about, what they could change in the world, and, what they would innovate, what they'd create. And all they needed was some money. And I thought, well, give them some money. And then I thought, well, a lot of these people that I'm meeting actually need a bit more than money. They need some support, some help, some challenge, some critique, a critical friend, a mentor, an advisor. And so I got into doing some of that. One company in particular I've been with for 12 years. I became NED. I became the chair. They've scaled quite well. I stood down from being a chair last year, and there are half a dozen other companies or founders that I support in various ways. And then during lockdown, I took all of that kind of angel investing experience and decided to write a book, which is Angel Think, which you've mentioned. And the premise of that is that you're going to get, as a founder, if you're fundraising, you're going to get competitive advantage if you can work out how investors think. So I'm sharing that kind of thought process with people to give them an edge, when it comes to fundraising.
Great. That's amazing. You mentioned, I'll just pick a few things out of that actually. You mentioned stories and the storytelling, and how important is that for you from analysts? Because you mentioned them telling their stories and everything, but what's the relevance and importance of that?
I think that for me, there's an absolute art and a skill in being able to tell a story.
Uh-huh.
And what is a story about a business, really? So I prefer the term narrative, being able to tell someone about what you're trying to achieve in the world and why it excites you, where you came from, you have an origin story, what your vision is about what you want to change in the world and why that's important and who it's important for, and that you're inviting investors to join you on that journey to make that thing happen in the world. And if you can't excite them enough in telling that story, crafting that narrative, then you'll just lose them. They won't be interested at all. So, and in that art, if you like, of storytelling, they've got also to be able to see that it's you, that you're the one that can do it.
Yep. So it's execution over ideas to a point, would you say?
Yeah.
In that I believe that you, this founder, is the person that can execute on this idea or, fulfill this narrative that we've talked about.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah, I mean, I think, ideas are 10 a penny, really, aren't they? It's, if you can't deliver on an idea, then it's of no real value to anybody.
yeah. So we've got founder market fit being the executor. We've got idea, then we've got the customer profile, whereby we've identified who we're doing this for, on all of those things. So when we talk about founders failing, let's take a step back, and why do lots of founders fail to raise? And then we'll get on to post raise and some of the things that you see. But let's talk about pre-raise. Why are they not getting those checks?
I mean, this might sound like a bit of a diversion, but I guess it's a bit of storytelling almost. So I'm going to talk about coffee shops for a moment, and we'll see where we go. In the village I used to live in, there was a shop, a general store, and it had one coffee machine. People would go in and buy a coffee, pay £1 or whatever, buy a coffee. There were 2 pubs, and down the road on the main A road, at a roundabout, there was also a garage with a Costa coffee. And that was about the amount of capacity, if you like, that could be sustained locally.
Yeah.
In terms of, people that would buy coffee out. So then I moved to a city 7-8 years ago, and it's a fairly decent sized city, and it's got, its share of Costa and Starbucks and Cafe Nero, the chains, the brands, if you like. And then it's got loads of independent coffee shops. And then the brands survive because they have a brand, and they have a community. And I don't drink coffee, by the way, so I'm probably talking out of my rear end. But
I do, so we'll see where this goes, and then we can.
Yeah, but they also have the benefit of position. So if you've got an empty shop, you'll go to someone and say, an agent, and they will say the best business that could go in here would be a coffee shop. So we'll find a Costa or whatever. And then all the independents struggle, and there's a lot of luck and a lot of position and a lot of niche. And many coffee shop owners seem to make incredibly bad decisions about where to open a coffee shop. No footfall, it's too small, there's not enough covers, there's no seating, there's no outside seating, they haven't got their pricing right, they don't offer an exciting menu. They make decisions about whether people with laptops can sit there all day long and not buy anything, or, and all of that. And that whole kind of positioning argument about, what your business is trying to do is equally important in any other business. So you can transfer that kind of analysis, if you like, to a tech business. If it's not got a good fit, if there's not enough market for it, I often hear people say founders fail because they run out of money. Well, and I think that's a kind of coverall thing. They don't run out of money, they run out of customers.
Yeah.
You haven't got enough customers to give them the money, to help the business survive.
So on the coffee shop point, because we talked about execution and all that sort of stuff, and then there's a brand piece that goes along with it, and I get that. There's a sort of a brand association in my local town. There's a few, and there's a Nero, and just down from a Nero, a new coffee shop has opened up, and it's nice, but it's sort of down this kind of alleyway, and I give it a year. I really do. We'll see. I hope they prove me wrong.
Yeah.
But I give it a year because of that. But is there a brand piece that goes alongside this as well? How important is that? Do you think for founders to kind of demonstrate their brand? And because there is this association, like you say, if one opens up and you go with the Neros because you sort of trust it and you understand it and whatnot.
Yeah, and it's dull and whatever.
Yeah, and that may be the case, but they are, like you say, I think there's a positioning part as well, because in my local town, to use your coffee shop example, the Nero does have the outside space. They've got a sort of corner where everybody kind of has to walk past, and it's not down a side street.
Yeah.
And so that's exactly to your point. And
Yeah.
and I just want
I
to
think
expand on that a bit.
the brand thing, I think at the beginning there's a real importance in terms of building your personal brand, in demonstrating, if you're trying to raise money and
That's for the fundraising, yeah.
sell something into a market, there is your authority in the space, if you like. What you know, how well you know it, how well you love the problem. You can talk for hours with customers about the problem. You're curious about the problem. You're willing to kind of explore the problem, whether you can come up with the best solution for people and so on. You become that trusted advisor. I think you can develop founder market fit relatively quickly. I don't think you necessarily need years and years and years of, kind of experience in a particular sector, but you have to love it and you have to kind of commit to getting into it. The kind of brand stuff, when we're talking about, iconography and signage and all of that, I think all of that can probably come a bit later. But I think what people want from you, say in a coffee shop, is your willingness to engage and create an experience for people, because you're just willing to be personable, talk to people, develop a rapport with people, relate to people, and so on. And if you can't create that ambience through the way you use yourself, as it were, then you don't differentiate that experience from any other experience.
Yeah, and that differentiation's a key point actually there, in that coffee shops, Nero wouldn't look at a town that has X amount of footfall and a thing comes up and there's a Starbucks in the town and go, oh well, we absolutely can't open there because there's already a Starbucks there, because they have an experience that's different from Starbucks, and it's that kind of differentiation piece. And that goes back to the execution over ideas thing. It's kind of like, well, we're just going to execute better than Starbucks and we know that we're going to do it better and we've got our following and whatnot.
Yeah.
And so that founder mindset and the founder market fit, let's talk a little bit about that and some of the things that you see in the good ones, in the exceptional founders. What sort of separates them from the not so great? Are there kind of character traits that you see consistently throughout the great ones?
Yeah.
And can you develop it, or are you just born with it?
I think, to my mind, people that are going to succeed have a few really key attributes. And I think Paul Graham talks about determination. Determination is more important than talent, in his view, and I wouldn't disagree with him. And I think there are a few others, but you can get into this kind of long list of attributes that actually doesn't serve anybody very well at all. But the few key things, I think, are absolute self-belief, that you know that you can do pretty much anything that anybody throws at you. You're willing to have a go because you're mentally strong, that you believe in yourself. Courage. You're willing to take a bet on not just yourself, but a bet on an idea, that you've researched it enough, you know the market, you know what customers want, and you're willing to kind of back this idea to the level that you need to back it to give it a chance to succeed. Grit, determination, tenacity, we all know what those things are. And then there's this other thing called spirit, if you like, or energy, or
I like that one.
That you can light people up with your enthusiasm, if you like. You're not going to attract a team if you're dull.
Yeah. You can't sell if you're dull either.
No.
Yeah, I often say that when I meet founders, some of them have just have it, and that, I guess that's that spirit bit to me. Like I'm not an investor, but I just know, and I'm like, if I was an investor, I'd invest in you straight away. And like, I don't even really need to know that much about your idea. Actually, I just know that you're going to be okay, you're going to make it, and they've kind of got that intangible spirit, and they bring me in, and like you say, they'll recruit then, but then they'll bring in buyers if it's a B2B play or something like that, that that they'll be able to sell because they're so passionate and they're likable and all of those things.
And I think all of those things are quite intangible, and as an investor, you often don't get much time spent with founders to make this, because it's largely impressionistic. Nobody asks founders to sit down and do a psychometric test, or certainly not at angel level. They might at VC level to a degree. And at VC level, that you might meet 3 or 4 of the partners, and they'll all have a view, but and then they'll all decide whether they want to go ahead or not. So you're there, as a founder, you need to create this great impression, that you've got a strong narrative and you are the person that is going to deliver. But you've got to come across as, really positive, with the right mindset, with self-belief, with your vision, energize people.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that one. So I want to talk sort of nuts and bolts a little bit, actually, Phil, in terms of the angel investing piece. And when founders are kind of approaching angels, what typically do they have? Or I'll rephrase that, what should they have? And what kind of amounts generally do you see? Let's talk UK specific that people are going for in terms of amounts. So, how much am I going for, and what do I have in place in terms of product and that sort of thing in order to achieve that?
Yeah. I think if you're pre-seed, as a founder, there are still people coming forward with an idea and this kind of faux traction stuff. They've got some vanity metrics and they've said, I've got 50,000 followers on whatever,
waiting list of 10 million people and all that sort of thing.
But it means relatively little. Ideally, people investors are looking for some evidence of firm traction. If you have no revenue, you've got letter of intent, for example. You've got a waiting list of people that want to try the product, or you've got people piloting, an MVP or something. And then more ideally, if you like, you've got some revenue, from an early stage product, that people are trying out. That might not need to be perfect, but I think there is this revenue is better than perfection, I guess, at that early stage. Proving that there is a need in the market. Then I think it's important for you to try to relationship build with investors, ideally before you even ask for money. I'm not a fan at all of the kind of random spray and pray cold outreach stuff. I do accept that cold outreach, if you make the effort to personalize it, can work. I wouldn't disparage it altogether. But some of the efforts to personalizing cold outreach are dismal. For example, I get an email that says, "I see we both went to Warwick University." And that, for me, that was 35 years ago. Well, where's the kind of gel there? I mean, it has to be about now, if you like, and what I'm doing now, and what I'm interested in, and what my thesis might be, and so on. And then there's the whole pitch deck art, if you like. The pitch deck is the way you begin to share what your narrative is, so that you can get, and the purpose it serves is to get to a conversation. It's not there to serve much more.
No. But I've always said that it's a conversation starter. It's to get it. To get you to, you're not dying on us, I hope. It's to get you to that next phase. It's that kind of door opener. It's that, okay, fine, tell me more.
Yeah. So I mean, and that's what your pitch deck is trying to achieve. So then people make so many errors in pitch decks that if an investor's default is no, if you make some cardinal errors in a pitch deck, they're going to say, "I really don't want to speak to this person." Why would I want to speak to this person who is overinflating their market, or can't prove that they got any real traction at all, or is making some basic financial errors in their financial projection?
Yeah, and so they've got a bit of a product and they've got some early revenue and that sort of thing. Like what sort of amounts are people going for?
Sorry. Yeah.
What sort of amounts are people going for at this stage in terms of the?
At a pre-seed stage, that usually people will go for the full SEIS allowance, 250K. And, if there was a kind of profile of, valuations, I guess, most people would be in the kind of 1.5, 2 million ballpark, with, little or no revenue. But, some people come along and think, well, I've got a kind of world-beating AI-driven, idea or whatever. So, they might go for 3, 4, 5 million. But, at that point, it begins to stretch credibility in the UK. I think in the US, people can go for
And
a bit more.
building out the product. So to a lot of people, do you believe in this kind of no code thing to sort of test it and validate it and then go build it once you've got that seed funding, or where do you see things panning out at the moment?
I'm not an expert in this area, but what I see people say and often write about is that no code, low code AI is giving people advantages to create something that an MVP that can be tested with spending little to no money and probably doing it without raising any money.
Yeah.
And, if you can do that, an investor's going to say, why would we, the investor community, give you £250,000 to build a platform that is just untested when you could spend 10K maybe on a low code, no code AI built solution to find out whether there is any interest.
Yeah, demand.
It's too soon to talk about fit or anything, but whether there's any interest out there.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. So let's wrap up by talking about the book and what little nuggets there are in the book and what people can expect from the book.
Okay. The book, I guess, has got 150 insights or ideas from several years of angel investing and of knowing many other angels from being a member of about 4 angel groups over the time, and knowing some one-to-one angels quite well. And it comes back to primarily a few key points, but this competitive advantage thing, I think is for me is a strong driver. And when you talk about competitive advantage, I tend to find that people naturally think that you're talking about IP. You've got or a moat. You've got something that is unbreachable because you've got some kind of legal protection, or you've built a moat that stops anyone else, doing what you do. But I think there are many other things that give you competitive advantage that people don't often credit or pay enough credit to. And I've talked, quite a lot already about the importance of you being the person that is investable. And if you can't demonstrate that you've got these attributes and this mindset about building something that's important in the world, that's solving a real problem, because you've got a passion for it and a vision for it, and you can see what is going to change in the world, then people will say, why would I invest in this person? I think there are other things that give you competitive advantage, like your team, for example. And I use this kind of almost throwaway kind of example. If I had started a startup and on my team, and it was an AI-driven software business, whatever, and on my team I had managed to recruit Bill Gates as an advisor, then on slide 1 of my pitch deck, I would say, Bill Gates is advising me on how I will build this business. If you don't have people of that ilk on your team, then, put them at the back, So it's how you position different things in your pitch deck, for example, that tells a more powerful narrative.
Right. Cool. Phil, there's been a lot here, and I've picked out loads of stuff about sort of passion and purpose, and it's about you, the founder, as much as it is the idea. Guys, if people want to check out the book, where's the best place to get the book, Phil?
It's on Amazon. You just search for Angel Think.
Angel Think on Amazon.
And it's on Amazon, whether you're in the UK or the US or anywhere else, you go to amazon.com or .co.uk, and you can also buy an ebook, a Kindle version, as well as a paperback.
Great. And Phil is also fairly active on LinkedIn as well. So if you want to follow Phil McSweeney, I know for a fact he does plenty of nuggets of advice on there as well. So guys, thank you, Phil. Thank you for joining us, guys. And if you've enjoyed this, don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you on the next one.
Been a pleasure. Yeah. Cheers. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Launchbase. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and share. Stay tuned for more insights on tech, funding, and product launches. See you next time.